Hello there, everybody, and welcome to a new WayForward Chat podcast for March 2026. I am your usual host, social media Tinkerbat Hoff, coming to you live from the Sand Planet, and I am joined by my usual co-host, WayForward head of BizDev and Publishing, Adam Tierney.
Hello, how's it going?
As well as our special guest for this episode, the one and only Matt Bozon, director of the Shantae series, and director and writer and designer of Star Saga DX. Always a pleasure to have you here, Matt.
Hey, thanks. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yay!
So, Star Saga DX is out in less than 3 weeks on April 7th on Switch, PlayStation 5, and Steam, and it is, for those unfamiliar with it, a new and improved version of the original Star Saga for Game Boy Advance that was released by Namco back in 2005, and it is a unique mix of top-down RPG and side-scrolling spaceship shoot-'em-up. For the DX version, Matt and programmer Michael Strage actually cracked open the original game code, used the original tools, made several improvements to pacing, made some bug fixes, and this actually got released on a Game Boy Advance cartridge that is available right now. It was pre-sold last year and is actually in customers' hands now. And then our friends at Mighty Rabbit Studios helped bring it to modern hardware and added features like an art gallery and a sound test, and that will launch in less than a month. And of course, both of you guys were instrumental in the creation of Star Saga, with Matt being the director, designer, writer, and Adam being an artist and the assistant director. And so I just want you guys to, get into the Wayback Machine here, tell us all about that. But first, I do want to remind our listeners, we will be taking questions later on. So if you have anything you want to ask about Star Saga DX or anything else, just drop that into chat with a Q:, and we will try to answer it later in the show. So with that out of the way, Commander Tierney, Matt, the floor is yours.
Yeah, especially Commander Tierney on this one. Matt used my last name when we were developing for one of the I won't say who it is, but one of the major characters in this game. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, that was wait, how do you not spoil who
he's a dude. Yeah, he's a guy. He's a dude.
It's okay.
But I believe it was because it sounds like tyranny. Was I correct, or were you?
So
Okay.
I think everyone had punish name. I don't know if they stuck with it, but they all at the beginning, like Wrecker was Wrecker because he was wrecking everything.
He's wrecking everybody's hearts.
Yeah, but what's that?
So he's wrecking everybody's hearts.
Oh wow. Yeah, he was also and his first name was Ian, who was named after the programmer Ian, who was, did that game, like all the game code. Mike Strage wrote the engine, Ian did the like most of the main programming. That game was interesting because it was split into almost like it was one team, but we split up because it was a top view and shoot 'em up hybrid. We kind of had like
It was
two groups.
Yeah, because I did some animation for the RPG stuff, but most of my time was spent with Ian on the shmup stuff. And you're right, it was really kind of siloed in terms of the action RPG team and the goals of that versus the shmup stuff on the side.
Yeah, for sure. The way it works is it's constantly, if anyone hasn't just curious about this game and how it operates, it's basically like old school Final Fantasy type of thing where you get random battles, and the random battles in this case are shoot 'em up segments, but more in the sense of like a Gradius or R-Type. So you get warped into the nearest spaceship. It's a different spaceship every time. You get warped in. There's a bunch of bad guys you have to take out. It's like a little skirmish, and you battle all these guys. And when you've blown up enough guys to reach the quota and like get end the threat, you get warped back down onto the surface right where you were, and then you just continue walking around. So I guess a little Zelda 2, right? A little bit Final Fantasy, a little Zelda 2 with its random battles. I don't know. It's a thing we've gone back to a couple of times throughout WayForward's history because it's a fun thing you don't see very often. But I always kind of liked that idea.
Yeah, and I think our studio is kind of known for doing genre mashups, like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of peanut butter, a little bit of chocolate. This is kind of one of the most notable, clear distinctions and that you're alternating back and forth between the two. You know, this was around, I think it was around 2004, 2005. We were working on this. You know, you had been working at WayForward on many titles leading up to that. Was this the kind of first genre mashup that you did, like, you know, really putting two very different genres together in one experience, or had anything happened at WayForward along that line before?
You know, the Extreme Sports was
I was
kind
going
of
to say
like
Extreme
this.
Sports. It totally
Like
is.
it kind of had the same deal. Overworld, you know, you run around, it's a very simplistic overworld in that game. I'm talking about Game Boy Color Extreme Sports, where you know you're walking around, it looks like a Pokemon game, and then it's like, hey man, want to battle? And then you go into like a who can skateboard the best. Um, so and then you get kicked back out to the overworld again, but it's not complex. Doesn't have complicated gating, moving from land to land. You know, it's not quite like that. But it's a little bit like that. I'm trying to think, there were other games that were like that. Let me see. That was the only Game Boy Color one that had that kind of back and forth. I mean, Shantae Game Boy Color has sort of that, but it doesn't switch between a top view. It has more like overworld, and then it has, you know, labyrinths or like, you know, traditional Zelda type dungeons or things of that nature. But ones that have like, I don't think there's an example of one that's this split in half. I mean, like Sigma Star Saga is like, like any way you look at it, you could just about have sold that as two games. One that was like a top view, you know, gated action game, like, you know, backtracking, kind of move, like go on the quest, like, you know, follow the storyline, take on the little quests on each planet, get the abilities that like help you overcome the obstacles. But it's like a top view Metroid type of game. But then the side view stuff is like, yes, it's kind of just like a Gradius or R type, that kind of, you know, back in the day in Game Boy Advance, even there were games that were just strictly one or strictly the other. So yeah, it is definitely like a two games in one kind of thing, but very, I just think it's highly experimental. Like this game, still, of all the games we've ever made, I don't think there's one quite as experimental as this game. Which is probably why we remembered and wanted to go back to it and get the re-release, which I know that was a big push for you, Adam, was like, hey, let's get this game out again.
Yeah, definitely. And this is one that we would get asked about by the fans a lot. In fact, it was kind of funny. We do, for the past 3 years, have done an anime expo panel, and I believe one of the people in attendance asked if we were going to do anything with Sigma Star Saga about 5 minutes before we actually unveiled the teaser trailer for it. So that was cool to see that people are still interested. Let's go back to the origins of this. So this was a Namco or Namco Homatech game before Bandai Namco was merged. This sort of started not entirely as an original game. It was kind of tied. It was originally going to be kind of based on one of their IPs, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's a weird one, and I don't know. It's hard to explain it because I only barely understand it myself. It was Namco Home Tech was, I guess, what is that, the U.S. side of Namco at that time, right? So you got the classic Namco, the one we all know that has been around forever, and then Namco Home Tech seemed like it was a kind of this subgroup. And so, at least that's the way it was. I'm sure everything has changed over the years. It's been like 20 years. But they had Namco Home Tech was allowed to make a sequel to Star Ixiom for Dreamcast. I'm sorry, Star Ixiom was on Dreamcast. I was not familiar with that game, but it was sort of like a space colony kind of game, like what would you call it? Like one of those games where you kind of navigate space and you set up colonies on planets, I think, if I got it right. But the Star Ixiom thing was, that game was sort of like a spin-off of the whole lineage of Galaxian. So if you go back far enough, it's like, okay, so the Galaxian, Galaxian, Galaga, they're not the same thing, but they're kind of similar. Like that whole thing leads to Star Ixiom. I'm not saying Star Ixiom is the game that like the natural like successor to Galaga,
but it's in the same universe, kind of like.
Sorry,
but
kind of, everybody, that's the wrong game. I'm saying Galaxian and Galaga. Whoops. Keep going. You.
I was going to say, not like a natural evolution, but in the same universe. So like how Gradius begets Parodius and
There you go.
Otomedius and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just like, hey, that lineage continued. Well, the Phil at who hired us from who worked over at Namco Home Tech was like, hey, I've got this thing. I can make a sequel or a spiritual sequel or something to Star Ixiom. But with the caveat, it's got to be kind of like another wild experiment. It can't be a direct sequel. We can like basically take it and make something new and different out of it, like basically evolve it again. And so I think he had come to us because well, I don't know, we'd had a lot of games that had like weird, like bizarre ideas, and we are definitely passionate about making something experimental and interesting. And it was kind of a low budget, honestly, like not a very not one of the more high budget games, but there was lots of room for originality. And so yeah, we just came up with this weird idea. Um, I think a lot of it was trying to figure out what Phil was after, because he seemed to want something that had epic space story and drama and kind of like space opera stuff. Um, he just had lots of ideas, and so we just talked with him and just kind of brought ideas together. But in the end, it was lots of kind of way forwardy stuff. Um, is the way I would put it. It's like in the end, like he didn't say, "Hey, can you make a game where it's top view and then it switches to shoot 'em up?" He's just like, "How would you make a crazy space opera adventure?" When I say space opera, I'm talking about like a Star Wars or a Macross
Right.
kind of thing, where it's like
Well,
characters evolve and there's
let's talk
drama. And, yeah,
let's talk about the story, because this is
sure,
something that I think is kind of unique to this title. It's a very story heavy game, and even more than that, it's a very scripting heavy game. I remember that
yeah,
this was the only title I was working on at WayForward back then, where we had like a dedicated scripting team of 3 programmers, because there was so much going on in terms of in-game cinematics and little cinematic moments and hundreds of scripted like unique animations as characters were doing that. Was
mm.
that something that just you wanted to bring to the game, doing something where it's very story driven, very lots of little contextual cinematic moments, or did that just kind of arise over time once you had the gameplay? Why is this such a story heavy game compared to, I think, a lot of the handheld games that WayForward might have been doing at the time?
That's a good question, because looking back on it, I don't think that was a strategic or a business choice. It was, I think it was pretty literally like first, you're right. I think that was the most story heavy and story driven experience we've done as a studio. Up until that, it was like talk to NPC, pull up the NPC's line. Like you could write that. Like it was pretty common for dialogue to be written right in code because you didn't have enough text to warrant doing it any other way. Like things were typically hard coded, like individual lines of dialogue. And like say, Shantae had dialogue, right? Like that was the first one that had that I worked on. Excuse me, that wasn't like an arcade style experience, but actually had a more involved story to tell with characters. This was like, hey, instead of walking up to the character and just playing their dialogue, Shantae mostly did that. Shantae one I'm talking about it's got a few things where a character does an action and then dialogue resumes, but there's not a lot of it. It happens a handful of times throughout that game. But yeah, this game, it happens constantly, and we hadn't done a lot of stuff like that before. And I think a lot of that has to do with with Phil, really. I think his influence on this project, if he had just wanted a space shoot 'em up game or a exploration game where you run around on a planet in a top view setting, I'm sure it would have had personality. That was a big thing we were doing. We'd always put a lot of personality in the games. But as far as like narrative plot points where characters are, there's intrigue and betrayal and mysteries are set up and paid off, that was a whole other level. I think that was probably me trying to be accommodating and help him get the storylines that he wanted. So I don't know. He was watching a lot of Alias, the TV show.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, he's like, have you seen that episode where this thing happens? I'm like, oh, let me go watch some.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think I still have numerous box sets of Alias DVDs somewhere in a like in a
Lots of
cupboard.
lots of
Yeah,
espionage, lots of backstabbing and
yeah,
twists and betrayals
Okay.
and stuff.
yeah. You can't trust anybody, right?
And
And
the
this,
other another
yeah,
thing
this has
too, I
tons of
mean,
that.
we've done games where they have multiple endings. We won't get into the specifics of it, but this is also a game that I don't think it's too much of a spoiler because we talk about it a lot in the marketing, where it's got
Yeah.
sort of a love triangle to it. Is that ever something that you've dealt with in any of your other games? Obviously, we have characters
No.
that, are in love with each other or hate each other, but this is sort of that kind of like Archie, Betty, Veronica sort of
Yeah.
motif.
Yeah, I've never done anything like that before, and I think this was, yeah, that was definitely challenging because it's also it starts to get into some stuff that goes a lot more. It gets into your game design philosophy, like of
Hmm.
each individual designer or director. Is when you linear storylines are kind of like one thing, but when it's stuff where you want to design a story based on what the player does, and you know what I mean, more like imagine the difference between if you were doing a visual novel that had some kind of you know or a dating sim. You'd write that, so that'd be such a more complicated thing to write. The writing basically is a design, right? It's like a big giant um tree with like all these different outcomes and stuff. This is like a baby step into that, I think, for us. I think before that, most of the things were kind of linear. It's like, well, you'll do this, you'll do this, you'll do that. This one, it's got a little bit of those in terms of interactive elements, but it also has a lot of that just even in the linear storytelling, like who you're supposed to, um, like whose side you're supposed to feel like you're on. It's
Hmm.
very different. I guess I'd just say this is like I can't think of if we've done this even since. Like most of the games that we've developed in the last, like since then, the last 22 years, most of them do generally have like a story that wants to be told. In other words, if you were to talk to your buddy and you both played the game, you'd probably have had a similar, like the gameplay experience would be different, but the story that you got would probably be mostly the same story. I'm sure there's exceptions. Like I know that not all of our games are just completely tell a linear story, but yeah, this was kind of complicated. But I mean, even I'm sure Adam, what you're talking about too is the personality aspects of like, hey, the characters aren't just like so black and white. They have dimension and they kind of change and shift. Like your main character, I mean, you're working for the good guys, then the bad guys, and then I won't spoil it, but like things change a lot throughout the game. Um,
Yeah,
but
for sure. Or even just kind of like juggling that sort of dynamic rather than,
yeah,
having have a characters and relationships between each other that is determined by gameplay is something we haven't really done that often.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't want to. It's funny. I want to talk about how it works, but I kind of don't exactly. But I guess I'll
Well,
just
let's
give
talk
some.
about let's
Okay.
not get too spoilery, but
Okay. Sure.
we talked about how deep it is in terms of storytelling and scripting and stuff like that. Was it challenging to have that marry with like a really robust adventure game? Because you're not just telling a story, you're also having events triggered based on what the player is doing, based on if they're advancing the story or if they're talking to an NPC or if they're skipping it. Like it's a big story, but it's also tied to a very complex game structure as well. What was that like
Yeah.
approaching that?
Yeah. It's kind of reminds me a little bit of how our Nintendo DS development was. I know that wouldn't happen for a few more years. Like this was, Game Boy Advance, and so Nintendo DS was we didn't even I don't do we know about it? I'm trying to think if we even knew at this time. We might have already been were we DS developed? No, we weren't. I don't think we were.
Yes, you were because Ping Pals was done before this. Ping Pals was before I
Oh,
joined the
so we already
company.
have. Oh, you know what? That actually kind of makes a little bit of sense then. So Nintendo DS mindset, I think, then probably did overlap with this game a little bit, and by that, what I mean is, um, we were kind of forming our opinions about how Nintendo DS should work. So you've got to. This will be a little bit of a tangent, but I'll make it quick. So Nintendo DS being a game that it like sparks lots of ideas. You've got two screens, right? So it's like, hey, you got two screens. I I remember being very displeased as a fan of this. Like I'm like, this hardware is cool. Like think about all the possibilities. If you saw gameplay on one screen and then the other screen was just like said drink Coke on it or something, like it was just a menu or something simplistic, that kind of annoyed me. Or if it was like, hey, the two screens are made into one very tall screen, that was kind of annoying too, because it's like, oh, you're just rendering one big tall window. Now, what's funny is we've made games on using both of those methods in the future. So it's not like it was like a bad thing, but what was really inspiring was how could you do two games, and I mean two completely different games on the two completely different screens at the same time? Because my point of view of that stuff was Zelda Four Swords for GameCube. It's like, hey, plug in your Game Boy Advance as a controller, And up on
Right, right.
TV, you can see Link, you can see all four Links walking around in Hyrule. You go in a cave, and you're having your cave experience down on your Game Boy Advance screen that you're looking down, and when you look up at the TV, the other players are still running all around. I still think that's one of the most unique, cool experiences. So anyway, back to Sigma Star Saga, it was all right. We don't have two screens, but we have two states of game. Like your top view running around, and then you're supposed to believe that there's aerial skirmishes going on over your head that you're not involved in, but you get summoned up into them. And so it's like, how do you make them feel like they're a unified experience and it's still going on? I think the kind of design challenge there, or what we tried to do a lot with this, is try to make things have meaning. If you're in the shoot 'em up section, just one, I'll say it from a technical perspective. Um, if it's like, hey, how did you shoot that bad guy in your shoot 'em up section? Like, wouldn't it be cool if that had some ramifications when you got back down to top view, as though the two games versions are aware of each other? Or what if you found something in the top view section that then did something to your spaceship when you're in the shoot 'em up sections? And that is actually in the end how it works. So you find weapons for your shoot 'em up sections in the top view, right? Like that's how
And
you.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got a complicated story. We've
Yep.
got complex gameplay, especially in how we're mashing together genres.
Yeah.
And one of the key features of this is the gun data system,
Hmm.
where essentially you're getting dozens of different pickups that can either affect the category of how they're fired, what the bullet type is, or how the impact is in the shmup stuff, which gives thousands of different possible combinations, as we saw when Hoff and I were streaming the game a few weeks ago. It's really a fun roll of the dice. You can try something and say, "Oh, that's completely garbage. I'm never using that again," or
Yeah.
you can find something that feels so perfect and OP. What was kind of your inspiration for doing that, for having such an organic gameplay system at the heart of the shmup gameplay?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember. I don't think that was inspired by anything specific. I think that was just a wild experiment. And I'm trying to think of if there was man, yeah, I don't think there was, like, nowadays you go, "Oh, they put a crafting system in it," because like it's so commonplace, right, to find objects in the wild and combine multiple things together. If that had any inspiration at all, the only thing I can think of is, well, I had played Survival Kids from Konami, where
I love that game.
you find a stick and you find a vine and you make a fishing pole, and then you can catch fish. So, um, let's see. It's possible that
Yeah,
that had
there wasn't that many
something to do with
crafting
it.
example back then, was there? But this is
No,
sort
I'm
of
trying to think of
a proto
anything.
crafting system from WayForward.
No, no, and the way that we present it is a whole lot more like refrigerator magnet poetry.
Yeah.
It's like, or Mad Libs.
Hmm.
I feel like it was probably Mad Libs, the for anyone who doesn't know those, it's like you have your incomplete story and it's missing adjectives, verbs, nouns. You plug them in and you get funny results. This is kind of like that, because just like you said, Adam, it's like this was not designed for, like, every weapon combination is meant to be a good one. Maybe these days, if we did the game again, we'd go like, well, wait, but that one's stupid. Why would you want a gun that shoots backwards and then the bullets don't, then they turn into bubbles and they float off screen? It's like, well, you made a dumb weapon. It's like, well, let's make sure the player can only make cool weapons. That was not the mindset with this game. It was, let them make anything they want. Like, they can make whatever they want. So the more pieces you get, like, yes, one is literally a bubble blower, like as though you had a bottle of bubble fluid and you could just like blow bubbles. But there's all the traditional stuff too. There's like piercing bullets. There's ones that detonate and cause an area of effect that kind of lingers on screen. There's spread guns. There's seekers. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's all
it's
about finding that sweet spot. That's what I noticed when Hoff and I were playing it the other week. Was, for example, I started getting some gun data in the first couple chapters of the game, and I got directional, where it's like, okay, now my movement is determining where my bullets fire. That's good. Then I
yeah,
got one where I'm changing the arc of my bullets after I fire it, and I thought initially, oh,
oh
this is great. I will combine those two things and have the ultimate bullet. And it was so unwieldy. But then I
yeah,
found the sweet spot was, okay, I'll keep the kind of like water spray, I can change the direction water hose when it's fired, but then I'll put that on a normal straight shot, or I think it was a straight back and forth shot, and then it worked
Uh-huh.
perfectly. So it's all about finding like, oh, these two are just a little too much together, but I really like this, I really like this, and I think it also is kind of cool because it plays into how do you want to play the game. Because with players of shmups, it's almost kind of, you see a little bit of this going back to like the options in Gradius, like the little floating
Sure.
buddies. It really kind of is customizable. And like, how do you like doing shmups? Do you like just being aggressive and manually aiming all the time? Do you like it as automated as possible? But yeah, there's a lot of choices when the players kind of get to go through all the different gun data in this game.
Yeah. Hey, you might think this is cool, Adam, too, because I don't know if you knew this. The like the way a lot of these were come up, the gun data, like specifically how they fire. You know how you just mentioned the directional movement. If you're moving left, your bullets go left. If you're moving forward, your bullets go forward. That's just lifted from Atari's Vanguard game, like
Oh, I didn't
2600,
know that.
Atari 2600 Vanguard. So what I did was at the time, by the way, for more context, sorry, it's just that it's such an old game. It's that this was, in my mind, this was before we had our, not our, I mean, the industry had the shmup renaissance, when it was like, oh my gosh, the cave shooters are coming out,
Yep,
like
yep.
people are playing the, like, finding the Toho games in the West, right? All that kind of stuff. This was kind of in the, like, hey, there was Atari, which had a whole bunch. Every Atari 2600 game to me feels like it was somebody's. It feels kind of like indie, like it was all a couple of people or one person making some weird experimental idea. And like Vanguard, the spaceship game on Atari 2600 was just literally that. What if spaceship game, but if up, down, left, and right controlled both your ship and the direction of your bullet? So you have to fly into a target you're trying to destroy. Like, in other words, it's kind of like exactly what you wouldn't want to do, is move towards a thing you're hoping to avoid, but you have to in order to shoot it. And then on the sorry, I'm a bit all over the place, but the other one, the ones where the bullets move with your ship, meaning like you're firing vertically, and if you sway left and right, the bullets will also sway left and right. That was another Atari 2600 thing, different game. I want to say, like, didn't like River Raid or something do that? There
Oh,
were a couple
okay.
of games that had that. So we just made a big list of all of the bullet type conventions that every Atari 2600 game had ever done. And that's
Wow.
like the one category of, all right, well, that's your, and then of course the other one's like, well, Contra has a spread gun, so let's put a spread in there.
Yep.
Like, all the Gradius games have these, the R type games have these.
Yep.
Like, it was
All the
supposed to be a
obvious like
giant.
exploding or splitting bullets or anything like that.
Yeah, it's all the things that you know of. And then when you get to, there's a category of impact types, which is like, well, what does the bullet do when it hits the bad guy, right? And so again, different games of the, up until that year, up until 2004, there were dozens of examples. Well, Missile Command, they explode, and you have to catch up the enemy. The enemy projectiles get destroyed by the big lingering explosion. That's what that one is. Some of the games have piercing guns, like Gradius has the laser and it pierces through, right? It's like, all right, so we got that one. Um, so yeah, all these games, it was just like, all right, here's the checklist of everything we've seen done in shoot 'em ups before, and then a couple of weird ones, and then there was a little bit of RPG stuff, like like, well, what if this one is a poison one? What if this one is
Right,
effectively an
right.
experience stealing explosion? It's like, what if you could sap the life out of the bad guys that you shoot, and it gives you experience, right? So I guess what I'd say about that whole system is it's extremely experimental, but I mean, it's still 20 years ago, or 20 years later, it's still experimental. Like, people who buy this version of this game, I guarantee they will come up with things we've never seen. Because we couldn't, there was no way to test all of these combinations. There's too many.
I
Um,
think Hoff, what is it? That's
Yeah,
15,000 or
about
so is the
15,000.
number.
Yep.
Yep.
yeah, it's like, yeah, how many are there? It's like,
Yeah, 70
what
types
is
of
it?
gun data and about 15,000, 16,000 combinations.
Yeah, it's like 20 times 20 times 20, something a little more than that. There's a few more. Um, yeah, it's weird. There's a lot. You can come up with some weird stuff. And some of them are just like, hey, well, you'll see. I'm just hoping some people will play it and maybe share some of their weirder things they find.
Yeah, totally.
So, so
Because
part of one of the things that's nice about this new release and why it has the DX on the title is that, like Hoff mentioned at the beginning, you and lead programmer Mike Strage were able to kind of crack the game back open 20 plus years later and tweak stuff.
yeah,
Part of it, I remember, at least on kind of the QA side was tied to that. You have, 15,000 different guns, you have randomized encounters, randomized objectives, and which ship you have is also randomized, and then you've
Yeah.
got variety of bosses. So, those would cause some legacy bugs that we were able to iron out. Aside from that, yeah, what was it like going through and making this DX version of it? Was, a lot of the changes stuff that you had been wanting to make for 20 years, or was it more about just playing the game recently and kind of going through the lens of Matt Bozon, a director, 20 years senior to where you were? Like, how did you
Sure.
arrive on what you and Mike wanted to change for this DX version?
Yeah, it was not it was less intentional than you'd probably think. Um so when yeah, like because we don't, for anyone curious, we don't own Sigma Star Saga. This is a game we made for Namco Home Tech back in the day, and it's theirs. This was a work for hire job. So Adam, when you got the permission for us to re-release it, that was step number one, right? So that was actually the catalyst. When you said, "Hey, we're going to be able to re-release that game. Everybody loves it. Let's bring it back." I'm like, "Yay, cool! I loved working on that game. For me, it was a distant memory, but I loved it." Right? Excuse me. But I remember one of the first conversations you and I had, Adam, was like, "Hey, what about those legacy issues like you just mentioned? Like because there's so much randomization, you could excuse me, you could randomly be piloting like at the biggest ship possible in the smallest corridor possible just because you got a bad roll, and it's like, well, your ship can't even fit in that cavern, so you're dead, Um, so I'm like, well, we're gonna need to fix those things, right? Because again, for context, for all the younger folks listening, it's Game Boy Advance era. There's no, these are offline systems. There's no patches. There's not even like a feedback loop for us knowing if anyone even bought the game. I mean, the way we would know if a game was selling well or not is we go to Toys R Us and see if it was in the bargain bin. That was like that, or maybe reading an IGN article or a Nintendo Power. Like that's how we would know if like that was it. That was it for feedback. You make a game, you put it out in the wild, and then you like count the days on your calendar till you see it in the bargain bin. That was kind of your feedback loop. Um, it's hard to believe actually, considering how connected we can be with fans now. It's like people who are playing the game and giving immediate feedback is wild. Watching people stream and stuff, but back then we couldn't do that, right? So we had found out slowly and over the course of years and eventually decades, like, hey, there's some legacy problems with this game. Like if you could randomly, like I mentioned, get warped into a like basically a non-progression, like a not like, hey, it's not fair. I got the giant spaceship, I can't fit in the tunnel. Or there was the famous case of the um I kill all the bad guys and the in the scene and the random encounter doesn't end, right? Like there were a few of those
Right,
cases
right.
in there. Um so that's the why. That's so once it was, hey, let's re-release it, it's my first thought was, well, we gotta kind of fix this and find some of those rough spots and smooth them out. But what's interesting is it seemed like it would make a lot of sense because we just finished Shantae Advance.
Hmm.
So we're talking like we just brought back and completed the 2004, the Lost Shantae game. Like Mike and I had just done that. So we had all of our Game Boy Advance, everything set up, unpacked, working. Our hands were like still dirty from finishing that game. And so we're like, hey, we can still recompile that code. The tools actually work. They're sitting right in front of us. Let's go in there and try to fix some stuff. So once we did though, this is where it kind of became it's almost like you open up the box of grasshoppers and um some of the first stuff I looked at, I was like, oh no. Like at this point in my life, I've played a lot of shoot 'em ups. Like a lot. Back then I had Gradius R type, I guess like I would play a game like Commando and
Well,
maybe
and
call
like
it
you said, it
RPG.
wasn't even just what you'd played. It was a lot of them just didn't exist. It was before the Cave
Oh, sure.
Revolution.
Oh yeah, of course, right? So like I didn't know even a fraction of what I know now, right? So when I'm opening those up, I'm like, hey, why are the collision boxes, the hit boxes like this in this game? Like, do we not know to do them? We didn't do proper hit boxes. Why didn't we do that? Like they were fine for the day. It was like, yeah, that's just kind of how people did them. But um, we didn't have a lot of that stuff where it's like, well, how would you graze another ship? How would you graze a bullet? Like, you can't do that. And then it's like, oh my gosh, the bullets on the player. There were just a lot of things. Like once you look under the hood and just go, oh no, it's like that. I'm like, well, it wouldn't hurt to just like fix a few collision boxes, right? Like I'll just fix the main ship so that you're not crashing into walls that look like you could possibly graze into them. Um, but man, the moment you pull one thread, the entire thing it starts to not unravel, but it's like a well, I don't know. I guess I'll just say I couldn't stop wanting to fix things, because once we put it into our own QA. By the way, WayForward didn't have QA back then, like in 2004. Because I looked through the credits, I'm like, who QA'd this on our side anyway? I forgot we didn't have that. Like that wasn't a department we had. We had
Right.
our publishers would do that for us. So even then, it was the only people at WayForward who would play the game were the developers, and then we'd send it off to the publisher, and they would let us know if there were any bugs. Totally different world back then. But here with our QA team, they started playing it. They're giving feedback. They're telling us, hey, we all get lost at this location. We don't understand what this line of dialogue's weird. I'm like, you know what? That's an easy fix. Hang on. That's an easy fix. Hang on. Then we start getting into stuff like, you know what? Why is our map so weird? And why does the map? We found a unfinished map in code and in engine that we never actually put in the game, if you could believe it.
Huh.
It was a very Professor Farnsworth smelloscope moment. We were actually trying to improve a map, and then we found that we had already made one 20 years ago and it was already in there and just wasn't being used.
That's wild.
Yeah, so we're like, oh, because we made one 20 years ago. There it is. Hey, why don't we turn that on? And then we did, and it's like, oh, because it isn't working. So each time we would do a thing like that, we're like, well, should we fix it? Like, so
And
in the end,
this ended up being different because we have
yeah,
when we ported other games, like for example when we did Blood Rain Betrayal and we ported that 10 years later to be Blood Rain Betrayal Fresh Bites. That
right,
was one where we, you look at the analytics and it's like, oh, there's a massive drop off of players on stage, whatever it was,
yeah, I
because of the
remember that.
challenge.
Yeah,
So that was kind of more like massaging, like, okay, well, if we tweak this and we tweak this, a lot of that kind of, led by our head of QA, Jeremy. But in that
yeah,
one, it was like, okay, well, we'll leave the original version and we'll do a version that has these kind of tweaks for kind of a nicer experience. And we've done that approach a few times. But this one is more, there's no two versions of the game. Basically, this is the
right.
better version of the game. This is the ultimate version of Sigma Star that you would have done back in the day, given the time and the technology and knowledge
Yeah,
back then, right?
it, yeah. I think a good way to put it, yeah, because I know I always get like from having known me for so long, I get squeamish about people growing, like specifically directors getting older, being in a different phase of life, looking at their younger person work, and then wanting to like adjust it based on their current tastes. Like I'm very sensitive to that. And I was very aware of that while doing this. I'm like, am I doing that? Am I being that guy? Um, but the thing is about this game is we couldn't talk to fans. We had no back and forth with fans then, and we didn't have not having QA, and like there was no sounding board. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, I can, if you like the old experience with well, it's fine. Like I'd say treasure your old copy of the game if you own one because it's cool. I still think it's really neat. But that would be like an unpatched version of a game, I guess. If patches
Right.
existed back then, we would have patched this game day one. We would have been in there fixing all that stuff that was like, oh my gosh, you can get stuck in this thing. Oh no, that line of dialogue made no sense and sent people running to the wrong side of the world. Um, this is that kind of stuff, but then kind of like, hey, while you're in there, why don't you like, you know, um, kind of give it a tune up as long as we're in there anyway. So I know players, it's like you wouldn't want to be having your hitboxes accidentally smash you into a wall. Like you wouldn't want it. So I that's I can yeah, I really do feel like this is the better version for that reason. Cause like, well, you'd want your shots to actually contact the bad guys and not accidentally sometimes clip through them or,
Right.
the,
Right.
the map that actually shows you where to go instead of not fully
Yeah, and
working
that's
as
and that
intended.
all
You
amounts
wouldn't
to a
really want that.
DX too, rather than like an option.
Y-
Um,
Yeah, exactly. Because
we've got a lot of questions
Yes, we
oh yeah,
do.
from your
okay,
fans. So before we move on to that, I just
sure,
had
sure.
one other question,
Mhm.
and then if you
I'll
have
keep
anything
it
else you
short
want to
then.
say, we before we move
Sure.
on, we've been very fortunate. We've been able to get this game onto modern consoles or we're working on it. We've done it with Shantae, Extreme Sports, Double Dragon Neon, Boy and His Blob, Blood Rain Betrayal, so many others. Is there any game that you worked on that is stuck in time right now at WayForward, like only came out once, that you would love to see us bring back on modern consoles?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow, like you mean like Space Chimps?
Space, you know what? Space Chimps was a very early 3D title for us on the DS. That was an interesting one. Shout out to Mark Gomez, director of Space Chimps.
Bring back Space Chimps. I don't know. That's a really good question. I
I
mean,
we get
I
we get
miss.
asked a lot about like
This is an easy one
Wendy
for
the
me.
Witch,
Oh,
DuckTales
sure.
remastered, Aliens
Yeah, yeah.
Infestation.
You know what? I miss that there's no. I don't know if there's a good way to play Mighty Flip Champs right now. I feel like
Right.
that was one of the strongest designed games that I've ever worked on. That one. You know what? I think Contra 4. That's my
That's
answer.
what I was going to say
Contra
too.
4. Yeah, the fact that that's not in any of those Contra collections or Konami collections, and I get why. But
Yeah.
man, I wish that game could be. I wish that game could be brought back so that it was playable and so two people could sit down and enjoy that game because I loved that game.
All right. We'll
Yeah,
work on that with our friends at Konami.
cool.
All
Let's
right, so
open it up and break it again.
we have a ton of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, we'll see what we can get
Okay.
If
through.
we want to start going through those, and then at the end,
Sure.
we'll just remind everybody what's going on with Sigma Star and how you can play this game, because I see a lot of people asking about that. So,
Yeah,
Hoff,
that
we
sounds
have a
great.
couple of good questions to dive into.
Yeah, I'll start with this one from Grayman964, who asks, what was it like coordinating with Bandai Namco for the DX version? Were there any challenges, or was it pretty straightforward? Hey, we want to do something with Sigma Star Saga, and they just signed off easy peasy. Sigma Star Saga was originally published by Namco before their merger with Bandai, as well as Atari in Europe, and it's been 2 decades since the original release. I'm guessing the game hasn't really been on their radar in all that time.
Well, I think this one is regarded as, even though they own it, I think it's thought of as it's a WayForward game because it isn't a WayForward original
Mm-hmm.
for like 95% of its guts. So it's kind of. I mean, I never spoke to them. I think this was just a.
This is probably more of an
Adam, you did
admin question, to be honest.
Yeah,
you
was.
did the deal, right?
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes when we've done ports, we're very involved. Like when we worked with Sunsoft on Clock Tower Rewind, we were very involved and back and forth with them. This one was just kind of a licensing deal. So we talked to the fine folks over at Bandai Namco. We told them what we wanted to do. We got an agreement with them. And most of the back and forth, which is me and Hoff right now, is on messaging and showing them, hey, we want to do this for social media, or hey, here's a potential cover art for something. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of kind of the approvals on the licensing side. But yeah, the for the game, I think once we had everything lined up, you and Mike just kind of hit the ground running, right?
Yeah, nobody had any objections or concerns because all of these are quality of life changes. I don't
Right.
think there was a lot of like, hey, why would you make it better? It's I think it was all kind of common sense things that you'd want to have fixed anyway. Um, just in the same sense, if we were hired to make a game, we wouldn't get opposition to patching a game that had problems, or we could make address fan feedback. And that's what so much of this is. It's addressing fan
Right.
feedback. It's just slow fan feedback. 20 years of fan feedback. So you could call this just like the first patch. It just took 20 years if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying.
they
This is
were
basically the
supporting-
game that would have been on the first patch if we've been able to patch GBA games in the year
Yeah,
2005.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, they were very easy to work with. It's been great. So we need to do maybe Wonder Momo Typhoon Buster next, or anything else that's Namco related that WayForward's been involved with.
Wow, Wonder Momo Typhoon Buster. That amazing.
All right, next question is from @SpiderThief8198, who asks, will Sigma Star Saga DX have a physical copy for Switch? And I can say, yes, it will. It has been announced by Limited Run Games. We can confirm it is coming out. There will be more information soon. Please stay tuned for details in the near future. Now we have one from @the3Fernac3. This is for Matt. Is there any way I can get your autograph?
Yeah, we do. So we'll go to a lot of the conventions here in Southern California. So we usually do Anime Expo or Comic Con, usually both. We've done PAX a couple of times, but I don't know if we have plans for PAX this year. But probably those other, if you happen to be at those, we usually do signings with either, we've done them with limited run. Sometimes we'll do the WayForward panel, and then sometimes we'll do a thing with Udon for Shantae stuff. So yeah, just keep an eye if you follow our social media accounts, the WayForward one, or just mine. We usually announce where we're going to be, but that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we don't really have like a mail-in autograph system or anything like that.
Oh no,
Everybody, all Matt and all the directors are so busy. So, like you said, find us at the PAXs, at the Anime Expo, at San Diego Comic Con, at any kind of special event. And if you follow WayForward on social media, we'll give you guys a heads up on any sort of signings or public appearances by directors like Matt.
yeah, and that's super nice of you to ask because the reason also we like the in person is it's so nice to meet you guys. I mean, that's really is it's the connection to you guys playing the games that we never had in the past. That's like one of the greatest things about developing games in the modern day. So yeah, we would love to meet you in person and actually say hello.
All right, yeah, live events are the way to go. Next one is another one from Grayman964, who says, it was mentioned previously that Scorpion King for GBA served as sort of a proving ground for ideas and tech. I was curious if there were any other games you remembered also being used as a testing ground of sorts for other games. I assume he means from WayForward.
Sure. Well, wait, Adam, were you gonna
Oh no, go
jump
for
in
it.
on that? Yeah, Scorpion King was our engine. That was Mike Straggy building an engine where we were a small group. I mean, there was only like maybe 4 or 5 of us on our Game Boy Advance team at the very start. So this was like a laundry list of, okay, so what I would usually try to do back then was plan a 5-year run of like not knowing what the games were going to be. I'm like, well, I know what games I would like to be making. So if we can make an engine that will support these kinds of ideas and then build as many of them in there, like it would be nice to have things like conveyor belts. They could be used for moving like the player in water. Maybe we do slippery ice or slopes. Maybe we could do monkey bars, climbing ropes, spike pits, death pits, all that kind of stuff. Build all that stuff out. Certain bad guy logic that we figure, every game is going to have its basic, some basic stuff. Like what kind of games are we going to be developing? And the answer then was, well, it's going to be platformers. They're going to be built on this same scale. Characters are going to be 2, kind of Mario blocks tall. Like we're going to build a lot of that stuff. So it was, Shantae is effectively the poster child of that era of gaming for us. But Scorpion King was the let's build those pieces first because a client was paying us. So let's do that. We'll do that job, but we'll build all of our tools and templates. So yeah, that's definitely the case. If you want to look at a couple of other ones, the Pirate's Curse used Adventure Time Hey Ice King's tech. That's why it is a inventory touchscreen, which is funny because I mentioned earlier how I don't usually do inventory as like bottom screen. I wanted it to be gameplay, but in that case, it just works so well. We carried that forward. There's other examples of that. Yeah, sometimes it's not always that it's the game was a template. Scorpion King was, but in other cases, a lot of times it's, well, what have we got? What are the tools that are there? They're working right now that are really good, fun to use, feel like they're nice and tuned, where we could start another game without starting with a deficit. You can actually start with like a little bit of some nice tech already working that you could leverage and do again. But yeah, Scorpion King's a good example of that. Extreme Sports was a little bit of that for Shantae 1 also. And there's probably a bunch of other cases, but we like to leverage our tech and not waste effort.
All right, good answer. Let's see, another one from at the 3 for an Act 3, who says, will there be any more Shantae Funko Pops besides the one for Half Genie Hero? And what are your thoughts on a Shantae fighting game like Street Fighter or Tekken?
Oh, so Funko Pops, I don't know. That's a weird one because that Funko Pop came out the first week of COVID when the world kind of shut down. So I don't know if it left a strong impression on Funko for like, oh my gosh, these things fly off the shelves. Kind of the opposite. It was like the stores that had shelves were getting boarded up. So it might have to be a reset with a conversation with everybody over there. So couldn't say. But let's see. But as far as fighting game, it's funny we talk about fighting game stuff every so often because we love fighting games. We just don't tend to make them. We've made a couple of games that are way back in our history that are kind of like fighting games, you can go look up our Star Wars. Sorry, I've got to be careful. Star Warped, um, fighting. What this Star Warped had a really simplistic fighting game, and it was silly. By the way, don't get your expectations high at all. This is in those goofy interactive parody products we used to do back in the CD-ROM days. There's some goofy stuff. Um, but it'd be fun. I mean, we talk about it from time to time doing fighting games. Right now, the focus has been more on like brawlers than actual like 1v1 fighters. But I love them. I play lots and lots of Street Fighter. That's like my jam. But that's currently not a. I guess that's just not in like the current WayForward wheelhouse. Not that it wouldn't be, but currently we don't do things quite like that.
And if people
But
are looking for more stuff along the lines of like a Funko Pop, Shantae, you're several characters deep into the series now with Charagumen figures,
mhm.
right? For Shantae.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Oh so Vokes, you can look them up, VOLKS. They do kind of like those like they're pre-colored pieces kits that you build. I mean, they're a quick build. You just basically put the colored parts together and like you have a figure. But those are available. All the main Shantae cast are there. And then we'll occasionally do acrylic standees with limited run. Vokes has done some things like that as well. They're on their website. They do have a US website as well. And then we've been doing plushies. We've done some with Fangamer and again with limited run. So you can see stuff like that. The one that's hard to get a hold of, that it's kind of like if you're looking for a cute little Shantae figure, is definitely the Nendoroid. But that one I think has been out of circulation for a little while. They every so often they pop up again, but I'd hunt that one down you know if you want like a really awesome premium figure. So, but Vokes still I think has them available, so you can find those right away if you wanted to. Just go to the Vokes USA website and you can find those
We
kits.
just typed in chat on YouTube, so click that link and you'll see a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
Shantae
they're
goodness.
Yeah, thanks
they're
for that.
awesome. And if you like getting like really into that stuff, like you can paint those things, you can make them look beautiful, or you can just build them as they are and just have like a more simplistic experience, like nothing too complex. But yeah, cool. But yeah, thanks.
Okay. Next question is from at MyKindSo1364, who asks, "Why are you guys so cool?" I'm going to say the answer is
Oh,
because we grew up watching Transformers animated cartoon show.
well, I guess.
It is the most common thing that Matt and Hoff and I chat about on our internal chat web message board, and it also has derailed many professional conversations at the company. So I think
This is
that's a good
true.
answer.
Next one
Wow.
is from at Sonic Preston and Kirby 2401, who wants to know, how big is the Genie Realm? Is it a whole universe, a galaxy?
Oh, that's a good question. We have not shown much of that. Every time we show it, it's just like a weird void with some twinkly stuff in it.
Secrets.
I guess I'd have to leave that to like a future storyline to talk about. Um, but yeah, I guess where I'd leave it for now is it's it's unknown even to the characters in that universe. It's like, is it just a abstract place? Is it real? Is it tangible? Is there ground they walk around on, or is everyone just like a weird spirit thing floating around? That's left intentionally vague. So I guess I could just say that's as much as there is to say about it. It's just uh, it's like an abstract location where just like magic flows from, and every time we've shown it in game, it's always kind of just like a void, like a pleasant, colorful void, like a starry night sky. It's just we go there. Sometimes messages come in or out, but it's kept deliberately mysterious. I know that's not going to be a satisfying answer, but that's all there is to tell for now. Yeah,
Okay. And
that's a good question. I,
the
I
mash
actually appreciate stuff like that.
at the mashed potato dude wants to know, will we ever see other playable characters like Risky Boots and Rye-Tops again in a future Shantae game?
Oh, we like doing that. So I'll just say yes. We talk about that a lot, and I'm definitely interested in doing that. So let's see, shaking that magic 8 ball, like my sources say probably. Yeah, sometime we'd like to do that. We love doing it on the kickstarted Half Genie Hero one. We liked that everyone was playable. We talk about it all the time. Like so yeah, I think inevitably you'll get to play as another of those characters in the future in a future game.
Okay.
In one way or another. I don't want to promise anything specific, but one way or another, probably, because we love doing that.
All right. We have one from Spyro966 who asks, I already asked your buddies from the last podcast of 2025 if you had given any thought on giving Shantae her own anime, and if you were, how you would picture it. Like, for example, would it be based on the games, take place after the latest game you're working on right now, etc.?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Aaron and I talk about that. Aaron, my wife Aaron, she's the creator of Shantae. She's also the licensor for all of this stuff. So this is a property she created that have had the pleasure of developing with her for years and years and years at this point. So that's a project that she and I really want to do together is make an anime. Um, I'm trying to. I was like, should I say something like we want to make it out of clay? It's going to be all puppets. Um, no, it would be. I think we would want to do it in an anime style. Something that is. You guys have seen the Studio Trigger video probably, and if not, go check that out because that's like the best example of.
Enter the Seven Sirens.
That's a thing where. Yeah. So, thank you. Yeah, Studio Trigger Shantae on YouTube. You'll find it right away. That's one where like literally she produced it, and I did the animatic for it, and then Studio Trigger did literally everything else. That's the result of what you get when she and I kind of put our heads together and build what we want and then let the creative people at the animation studio do what they do best and go wild. That's the result. So I'd say it's probably something similar to that is what you could expect from a show. And yeah, we definitely want to do it. As far as when and how, yeah, you'd probably imagine, or I mean like the content of it, probably a lot of the things that the games have covered because there's a lot of just basic character introductions and growth that we've done in the games that you'd kind of need those for a show for the characters to make sense to people. But I think there'd be a lot of things that would just not be in the games because not all stories are suitable for an interactive experience and vice versa. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd get some overlap and you'd probably get a lot of originality as well.
And a real quick follow-up question, similar. You've had I believe two so far, Shantae comics released. Are you and Aaron going to be doing more stuff in the comic manga space?
Yeah, we hope to do that too, because it's always a good way to kind of lay down some ground rules for a show is with the comics. So if you want to see those are still available on Udon's website. It's actually it's the swimsuit special. So when you see it, if you're like, hey, that looks like a swimsuit thing, is that the comic? That is the comic. So it's the back portion of the book is the comic. And then it's just a bunch of full page illustrations for the first dozen pages. But if you want to actually read the characters going on an adventure, you can get either of those. There was a 2024 and a 2025 issue, and they both have a story to tell at the back. So that also helps because that's another one where, we made those ourselves. So it gives you a sense of what would this be like if there was more of that. So yeah, go check them out. It's also, I think there's some pretty inexpensive options. They're like, what, $5-6 to get into it. So pretty easy.
Okay, I'll try to squeeze
easy to
in.
hop in there. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for
squeeze in a few more questions here before we got to wrap up. Another one from Grayman964 says, Sigma Star Saga does feel very Macross influenced. How much Macross have you seen?
Let's see. I've seen the original and not a lot else. I mean, little bits here and there because it's unavoidable. Like everyone was watching Macross Plus back in the early anime days, and then the original series, of course, and like both the original and the Robotech adaptation that we got in the U.S. That's something I knew as a in my early teens, right? So yeah, definitely know that. I'm sure there's influence because there's a whole lot of I mean that's kind of ingrained into anime and that's kind of like one of the better examples of like a space opera, right? So yeah,
and I
definitely.
mean, in terms of space opera, you're a pretty huge Star Wars fan, right? Is that kind of the
For
top
sure.
of the genre for you?
Yeah, but what's weird, what's really funny is I don't know if you guys know Outlanders, the manga. Aaron and I we really enjoyed reading that as it was coming out in the US, and this was a long time ago. This was like early days of manga coming over to the US as single issues before they came over as volumes. So like early days of manga kind of like trying to get into the US market. So we would read that. That's a great space opera type thing that had more influence on Sigma Star Saga than any of the others for
Huh.
sure. I mean, Star Wars, yes, because I do love Star Wars, especially original trilogy Star Wars. I love all that stuff. You got the love triangle angles and all that. Um, but there's really some, like, that's a cool one to look at if you look at it and there's a few pages and you look up Outlanders and not the anime but the manga. If you look that up and they're like, wow, this is cool, that's totally something I want to see. Like the bio-organic spaceships just lifted straight out of there. I mean, that was the direct influence of our weird
Huh.
spaceships
I'll be
that are
darned.
thinking weird creatures that you like form a psychic bond with and stuff. It's right out of there. So, um, check it out. If you're like, no, thank you, don't like it, then don't check it out. But but if you see it and you're like, cool, what is that? I don't even know where you can get that anymore. I don't know if you can buy. I've not seen an Outlanders comic on even volumes of it. I've never seen it digitally anywhere. I don't know where it is. It's got to be somewhere. But I think it was Dark Horse, wasn't it? I don't know. I'm not. Sorry, I don't want to minimize my window here and screw up
Yeah, a
the
lot of those
recording. But
early '90s Dark Horse manga you just
it was
can't get
Dark Horse.
anymore.
Okay, right. So yeah,
Hoff, we're almost out of time. Do we have a
yeah,
couple of like quick ones? Maybe do like a rapid
sure.
fire round
Oh
if
yeah,
anybody
let's
has any
try. We
quick
just got we
questions.
got a few questions about
Sure,
some of our
go for it.
other titles. At Edmund Garcia 2007, will Marble Knights make a comeback on consoles?
It is planned. We want to get that thing everywhere, so stay tuned.
At Mika Newgrounds asks, any discussion of a proper sequel to Lit or interested in making more games in the horror genre?
Voldy, our CEO, for whatever reason, has been like talking about Lit a bunch recently. So I don't know that it's kind of a weird one, but I never say never. I think we like all our characters. We'd love to revisit all our characters.
We do have a really cool horror idea in the works, by the way. Hopefully we can really make it happen. Next question is from at Edwin Makes Games. Godzilla Domination introduced super stylish news reporter Connie Matsu. Does
Yeah.
WayForward own the rights to her, or Atari or Toho? Has there been any consideration to having her appear in another WayForward game?
That's so silly. I'm trying to remember. So I think I made her. Um, I think me and
We
Luke
talked about
Brookshire.
her during the Kickstarter a lot because director
Yeah,
James Montagna was obsessed with her.
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I think you created her, but I would
I
imagine
think
Toho probably owns her,
I
probably, right?
think probably. I know there's weird stuff with Godzilla. I was told at that time. I'm sure the rules have changed, but at that time I was told the various Godzillas were kind of like attached permanently to their directors. That applies to the films. I don't know how that applies to other stuff. Like for example, we couldn't use like any traditional Godzilla for that game. I know we're talking about Connie, but like I had to make my own Godzilla for that game.
Huh,
I don't know if you knew that. It was like
I
so
did
Oh,
not.
I
they're like,
didn't
yeah,
know
you
that.
can't use other
That makes
directors'
sense.
Godzilla. So yeah, I had to make my own, which is why mine is green. It's like, well, all right, my Godzilla is green. It's more alligator looking, and it's slightly inspired by the '70s ones. And then Connie was just a let's get a cool girl in there for like some humanity. So it's and then I think so Luke Brookshire who directed a lot of the early SpongeBob and was also a way forward. I mean the TV show SpongeBob. SquarePants, in case you weren't sure which SpongeBob I meant,
Oh, that one.
is he was the he was
Very
working at
very
way
common
forward.
first name.
Yes, he was working he was working at way forward with us back then in our early Game Boy Color days. This was before he went to Nickelodeon. And he did a lot of those drawings. I think I roughed them and then he did the like refined all of those illustrations and then we basically scanned them and pixeled them. I think so. I don't know. I want to say I made her. I want to say, but I can't remember if Luke did or not. Maybe I don't know. We used to just sit around and like bring sketchbooks to the mall and just draw stuff. So I couldn't
She
tell you.
looks to my eye like personally drawn by Bozon. It looks to me
I
like
feel
the
I
early
feel
like
like
Shantae
that.
key art.
Yeah, yeah. So probably, but I don't know who owns it. I have no idea. I mean, we don't typically our work for hire deals where we wouldn't when we'd make those games, they were for hire for somebody else and
Yeah.
they would own whatever we made. Like so I it's hard for me to imagine, you know, but Yeah, I don't know. It's nice to know that there's fans of her. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, a few years ago, I strongly suggested we should try to get her into Dawn of the Monsters, and that didn't go anywhere. I don't know
Oh,
if it was because there were roadblocks that prevented it from happening because someone else owned it,
I can't.
or
I
what.
don't
But I
know.
remember I did bring it up at the time. That would have been
I
Yeah.
know
a
that
cool
we did talk
crossover.
about the possibility of doing licensed IP within Dawn. Like, hey, could we get Godzilla in Dawn and stuff like that? So yeah, if we ever get the opportunity to actually do a legitimate Godzilla thing for WayForward, we'll definitely need to bring her back.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, we as far as we know,
Yeah.
it's probably all Toho. I mean, I assume they just anything with Godzilla attached to it is probably theirs, just because I would expect that.
Any other questions, Huff?
Yeah, I'll just end it with this one from @NetoX75. And Matt, you can keep this as vague as you want.
Okay.
It is,
Okay.
Matt, what can we expect for the adventure in Shantae 7?
Oh, you just expect just nothing at all. Yeah, just clear your mind. Just I'm of course I'm just joking because I don't know what to say. I'm like, well, there's certain things that we like to have in every Shantae game. Like Shantae will be in it. Try to keep that humor, animation, the love of all the stuff that you guys know that we love will be in there. So like you will have a good time. That's the part I can guarantee is we're making something that's going to be a lot of fun. I don't want to spoil anything or say anything too early.
This is
The only
good.
thing we've
This is fair.
teased is, I believe,
There's
two
yeah.
ponytail Shantae, right?
Yeah, the artwork has the yeah, exactly, has the she's got the big like pigtails or twin tails, and then Risky Boots, if you look closely, she's also got the braids coming down, which is unusual. So they both have new hairstyles, which is pretty cool. We have way more to show about that. That was a tip of the iceberg kind of a thing, but we just wanted to give you guys something to look
Without
at.
spoilers, how's it going?
Yeah.
How are you? Because
Great.
you're working on that project right now. How's it going?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's really fun. It's also like a I feel like the one thing I'll say about it without saying hopefully much of anything is this is not a cookie cutter experience. If you're like, hey, are they going to ever do anything new with this? Is it going to be more of the same? It's definitely something interesting and different. So I hope the last time there was something interesting and different. Well, look, I try to make it that every game is interesting and different. They all have something about them, but there's some that are like diverge from the beaten path more than others. Like Pirate's Curse having no transformations, for example, was a big shift. This has some big shift kinds of ideas in it as well. So I guess I'd just say, I guess look forward to something unusual that you haven't played before. Like play something that's a little different than what you've previously experienced. I think that's probably all I should say on it. But I
That
think
sounds about right.
I think you'll have a good time. Our goal here is just entertain you to the fullest. So I hope you'll look forward to it. And I don't know. I'm excited next time we can actually say a little more. But that's
totally.
where it has to sit for now. Yeah.
All right. I would say that that is about all we have time for today. Matt and Adam, thank you both for coming and taking the time out of your schedules to talk about Sigma Star Saga DX and everything else. The game, of course, launches on April 7th, but we do have additional plans to show it off between now and then. Hopefully we can do another live stream or two. And then, as some of you may know, we do have the SCV Collectibles show right here in Southern California, practically right in our own office. And there's going to be a special retro game blowout event on March 28th, about 2 weeks from now. Is that right? Less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks, yeah. Just a little more, I guess about a week, really. 9 days? I think 9 days. Yeah, 9 days. And so we're going to have an exclusive new WayForward trading card there. Plus, we will actually have the game itself on hand in playable form. So if you are nearby, near Valencia in Southern California, if you can come by on Saturday, March 28th, you can get some early hands-on with Sigma Star Saga DX. You can also check out the latest trailer on our YouTube channel and look forward to more info about the physical edition dropping in the near future. Aside from that, a bunch of our games are on sale right now on Switch and PlayStation, and then the Steam Spring sale just started today, so you can get a few Shantae titles and Mighty Switch Force Collection for 50% off, Clock Tower Rewind and Extreme Sports for 40% off, Ruby Arrowfell and The Mummy Demastered and Mystic Bell are all 65% off, and Lunark is a whopping 80% off. It's only like $4, so it's a great time to complete your digital library with anything you have not picked up yet. Also, I think it's okay to mention, we haven't said this publicly before, but when Sigma Star Saga DX launches on Switch and Steam, I believe for the first 2 weeks it will be 10% off. 10% off launch discount, so you can save a couple of bucks if you get it right out of the gate. Guys, is there anything else I should mention?
No, this has been fun going down memory lane, and I did a quick check on eBay, so people already have Sigma Star DX, the Game Boy Advance cart in hand. Hopefully, if you were lucky enough to get one of those from Limited Run, you're enjoying the game. Otherwise, yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much, Matt, for making the time with us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I hope you look forward to it. I guess I'd just say if you're someone who's inspired by kind of the earliest days of like that indie spirit, like what are some of these strange, unusual corners of the game business where experimentation was happening back when it was still everything was brick and mortar stores and things were sold at retail. This game, I think, kind of embodies that moment in time. If you're curious about that, yeah, I think you want to check it out when in any of its forms that you could get it. Check it out because it's cool. It's a neat piece of history, but it also kind of I think still stands up as a fun game. And yeah, please check it out. It's cool. It's a neat, highly experimental game that I think is still a good time to go back and play. So hope you enjoy it. Share it, please, because we want to see. We never got that back in the day. I'm really looking forward to people playing it, seeing someone on a stream or screen grabs, or if I don't know, anything you think is funny in the game. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing people talk on social media, anywhere you want to post it. We never had it. We were starved back then. We have no idea what you guys even think about this game, other than just legacy letters and things. So yeah, thanks. Yeah, hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And with that said, thank you to everyone who tuned in and listened today and asked questions. I apologize to anyone whose questions we were not able to get to, but we will have chances in the future. Please look forward to Sigma Star Saga DX on April 7th. Wishlist it on Steam or PlayStation or whatnot. And we will catch you next time.